Rachel,
Hi.
why solely recycled?
It started off because I wanted recycled packaging for another
Okay.
company I was
Why
dealing
did-
with.
Okay, why did you want recycled packaging?
Because I had a jewellery business,
Uh-huh.
and it was fair trade jewellery, and I thought that I wanted to put it in recycled packaging.
It sounds to me, Rachel, that you're on a crusade, and crusades cost money. Is it a crusade, Rachel?
I don't feel that it's a crusade. Yes, ethics are important, but I see it as a feasible business model.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous that you come along with what you call a business that you describe as ethical and recycle materials, and you produce a box which my 8-year-old daughter Emily could make better at school. You know, the ends don't match up, the lines aren't straight. You know, it's pathetic, it really, really is.
So, talking frankly, that would have put the fear of God in me.
The worst part is what they did to my hair. That was the BBC makeup and hair studio. And yeah, it was just horrific. It just... So yeah, forget Duncan.
Yeah, that's all you were worried about. He was a pussycat. Yeah. So look, I guess the first question is, why go on Dragon's Den? Because, you know, it's it could make, it could break.
I didn't choose to. I just want to clarify, it was never my idea. So I'd set up the business. I met somebody in a shop in East Grinstead who was out looking to buy a box. Coincidence. Turns out he was a very well-known broadcaster on, he worked on Virgin Breakfast Show, did the breakfast show, announced that Chris Evans was dead live on radio, got sacked instantly, and got moved over to Kiss and did the breakfast show on Kiss. Got very drunk and on drugs one night, hijacked a radio station, broadcast lots of stuff that he shouldn't have done, and got sent to rehab. So I meet him in the shop and he says, I just want a normal job, Rach. Can I come and work with you? If anyone ever suggests that, the answer is no. Anyway, after about 3 weeks, he realised he could not handle a normal life. He was so used to being on the front page of The Sun or The Mirror or whatever, and suddenly having to be in an office at 9 o'clock with no fans outside was just all too weird for him. But he didn't know how to get out of it. So he thought, I know, I'll apply to Dragon's Den. I won't tell Rach because she won't do it. But it'll be a lovely surprise for her, and then I can find new business partners and I can get back in the public eye. So
And that was Christian.
that's Christian, yeah.
Yeah.
Stage name Robin Banks.
Right. Okay. Well, note to self: don't employ him on a radio station.
He's in Radio Armand now.
Oh, really? And there'll be a
drugs
reason for that. There'll be a reason for that. So what was the experience really like? I mean, they're the highlights. They've been edited to an inch of themselves. But what was the experience really like? And I guess what did you learn from it?
So we got fast-tracked through because of Robin being who he was. But it's all staged. So you're filmed walking up the steps. There are no steps. When we did it, it was filmed in Pinewood Studios, and it's now filmed up in Manchester. But actually, you go in, and the 5 dragons face you as you see on TV. You're not allowed to meet them beforehand. You're not allowed any interaction with them. You try and break the ice, like hi, and they just go. So it's daunting. But for me, I think, well, we had no history. I didn't know anything about packaging. I'd never worked in packaging. My background was software. I'd never run a business. So I had literally like nothing going for me. So I thought, well, they're only going to say no, so let's just enjoy it.
The rest is history.
Yeah, we were in the den for about 2.5 hours, and that gets edited down to 10 minutes.
So Duncan grabs the headlines in your Dragon's Den story, but two of the other dragons were a bit more open to the opportunity. It was Peter and Theo, I believe, that invested in the end, was it?
They just felt sorry for me, if I'm honest. Duncan was so brutal. Deborah Meaden, after finding out about Robin's drug habit, was out straight away. Yeah, they felt sorry for me.
So have they played a part in the business since?
So I met them about 2 months after the filming, because on the TV it's just a yes, a verbal yes, and then you have to go through the whole due diligence process. So we met about two months later, and they ripped my business to pieces. Our pricing, branding, everything. And then at the end of it, it was Theo's right-hand man that said, you know what, we're going to forward you the money and leave you to run the business because you know what you're doing. Despite what Duncan said. So that's what they did. So they've been silent partners ever since.
And was there anything, I mean, sometimes it's hard to hear when you run a business, the truth. But was there anything that you took away from that and said, actually, it was hard, but it was right? Did you change anything, or did you just feel it was unfair criticism?
No, I didn't change anything. I was told by Theo that I would have to compromise and sell products that weren't ethical or recycled. And on TV I went, yeah, of course. But no, we never did.
So we didn't see the full programme. You would have pitched your company. You would have explained what it was and the USPs. So for anybody in the room today that doesn't know about your company, can you give us that pitch or that revised pitch and explain really why you think you've been so successful from a USP point of view?
So when I started the company, it was because we had a jewellery company and I couldn't find any boxes. And it was the start of Etsy and Not on the High Street, and lots of smaller jewellers and crafters, and yet all of the UK manufacturers in packaging were saying, well, you need to order 1,000 units of each size, of each colour. And I was like, I cannot be the only person that has this problem. What happens if I want 20 bangle boxes? A bangle box is a bangle box, it's the same size, and each manufacturer was trying to charge you tooling of £300 a time for each size. So I said, well, all we need is a website. Let's disrupt the market and sell boxes with a minimum order of one. So that's what we did.
And I want to go back really to the beginning, well before Dragon's Den, if I may, because I've read quite a few business biographies over the years, and there always seems to be a common theme for me for successful entrepreneurs, and that is that quite often there's something or someone at a very early age that shaped them. I think we got that impression when we listened to Dame Diane and the impact her parents had on her. So turning the clock back, can you tell us, I know and I've read that you've described your childhood as chaotic. Can you tell us about the young Rachel and maybe some of the things that happened that shaped you?
Chaotic is an interesting word for it. Long story short, my mother was married to someone called James, and James and her were not getting on well, so she embarked on an affair with somebody called Graham. Graham was very blonde, my mother's very dark, and James was very dark. I arrived unexpectedly. This is my natural hair colour. And my mother's husband, James, said, well, she's not mine. You would expect a normal breakdown of the marriage, but what happened next was very unexpected, where James then turned around to my mother and said, I only married you because I want to become a woman, and I was going to model myself on you. So fast forward to when I'm 8 months old, their marriage is in tatters, but they're still together. There's an accident outside our house, unrelated. We live in Exeter. The police come round to get a statement from my mum about what happened in the accident. And instead of seeing my mum there, saw my stepdad in my mum's clothes with her makeup, which in '71 was unheard of. I was sitting on the floor and I was blue with no clothes on. So the police left, called social services came round, and it ended up in a scene with my stepfather throwing me like a rugby ball at social services saying, take her. So I ended up in care. And I think that when you come up in that environment, you are so irrelevant to everybody. You're irrelevant to the system, you're irrelevant to the parents. It was the irrelevancy that was like, okay, I want to do something that makes me relevant.
And that's at the heart, you believe, of your drive and...
That was my drive until about 3-4 years ago. We have a bad gene in our family, and we unexpectedly lost my sister to cancer. And when she died, but her dying, long story, but basically her dying saved my life because I got diagnosed as a result of her dying. And so that was 4 years ago. And I'm now the age that she died at. And I just made a promise to her that I would make every day count because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
So obviously those are life-changing circumstances, both of them. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they're more than you've got a couple there, and more than a lot of us may have gone through in our life. But I think you've had other business challenges that you've certainly had to overcome, and you know, your story seems to have the word resilience written all over it, because I believe, you know, you've had issues with fire, accountancy problems. Tell us about some of those other issues that you may have come across.
My first warehouse, the warehouse was separate to the office. I had my first member of staff, and I was on the phone to a customer, and the member of staff came running in and said, the warehouse is on fire. And I carried on talking to the customer. And my dad, who I'd sort of made peace with, had actually popped over that day, and he used to be in the fire brigade. And I got off the phone, and I went and stood outside, and I saw the flames coming out, and my dad was like, "Don't just stand there, dial 999." As the smoke billowing out. But fortunately, we were next to an ironworks, and the guys there, they had so much fire equipment, and they got the fire out pretty quickly. But we lost a lot of stock.
Yeah.
And it was literally about 2 weeks later, you just couldn't make it up. I opened the door of the office, I tried to open it, was pushing at it, and the whole office was so flooded, my chairs were floating, and and all of the paperwork that had been sort of left on the floor was all floating as well.
So how do you manage to be so resilient? I mean, you know, any one of those things were turning points in your life, and you could have gone one direction or the other. Surely they either make you or they break you. And how do you manage to be so resilient and take the right path?
So the worst was, it was about 2018, and by then we'd got, I don't know, 50 staff, 60 staff, and we are totally reliant on website sales. That morning there were no website sales, and bear in mind that we'll probably do between 15,000 to 20,000 a day just through the website. And we're like, okay, why is there no website sales? Something's amiss here. So we got on to our developers, and they said, oh, it's not us. And then the web hosters said, oh, it's not us. And I was caught in the middle saying, well, I don't care whose fault it is, but something's causing us to have no web sales. And in the end, I did a really brave thing. I sat there and cried. And it was my husband, Steve, that was like, well, okay, well, you've had your pity party, now put your big girl pants on, you need to solve it, you know. So not always resilient.
Some support is needed at times.
But yeah, that was one of the few times I called Theo's team and said, I don't know what's going on here. And we'd been hacked really badly from multiple thousands of bots hacking us from around the world, which basically slowed our website to a halt.
And what happened after that? I mean, how long did it take to sort that problem?
Once we knew what the problem was, we put in an additional layer of software that verifies the people coming into the website, Cloudflare, and it was great because it was a learning curve, and it made us a lot safer for our customers as well as us. But it took about 24 hours, 48 hours. Yeah.
Difficult times.
Yeah.
So entrepreneurs often talk about their why they take risks, why they work hard, why they go on scary television programs. What would you say the Rachel Watkyn why is? Why do you do this? Why don't you just do a 9-to-5 job somewhere round the corner? Why do you put yourself through this? Why do you want to be an entrepreneur?
I don't know. I really feel like there's just something in me, whether it's genetic or whatever, I just can't stop. And And as soon as I sort of get something going along nicely, I'm like, oh, I've had an idea. Oh, we could do this. Oh, we could do that. So at the moment, I've limited it to 4 projects. So we've got Tiny Box Company and also a factory. I'm writing a book. We've got a big charity website project that we're working on, which is very exciting, and about to launch another company. So, yeah.
So you really are busy.
Yeah.
Tell us about the book. What's the book going to be about?
So the book, in 2020, during lockdown, my sisters, or my stepfather, who did transition to become a woman in 1972, and it was one of the first, or it was the first divorce case of 2 women in the UK. So he died, and when he died, it was not on good terms with my sister. And my sister was so angry, she said, Rach, we've got to write a book about our childhood, because it was so ridiculous. So it's been her that's been driving it, and it's literally the whole story, because, I mean, I haven't touched on my dad, but my dad was, what can I say? Suffered from mental health issues, and he basically presented himself to my mum as a baron from an old German aristocratic family. So I was brought up, once back out of the children's home, I was brought up to believe that I was a baroness. It's on my birth certificate, it's on all of my documents. Anyway, turns out after he dies, he leaves a box of secrets, as we've named it. He made it all up. He was Graham Watkins from Box Hill Trailer Park. So yeah.
So writing that book, that's going to be hard, surely. But is it therapeutic as well? I mean, what's the experience like? Because you've not finished it yet, have you?
No. You can buy it. It was pre-order on Waterstones and Amazon. When I saw that, I was like, oh, we haven't written it yet, but never mind. It's on its way. It was interesting writing it, because it makes you relive scenes, and it makes you realise how screwed up your own perception or thought process is. I mean, one of the examples of that, we got sent back to my mum and my real dad, who ended up getting married, and it was a very toxic combination. One of them had a bright idea to get a dog, not a puppy, but a full-size Pyrenean mountain dog. And I don't know if you know, they are big dogs. They hadn't thought about how they were going to feed the dog, walk it, or anything. This poor dog called Klim. Anyway, they got into the habit of, when the dog howled, they would whip Klim. And at 6-7 years old, I couldn't cope with it. So one day, we knew it was coming, me and my older sister, so we hid the whip. And my mum turned around and said, we know you've taken the whip, you better bring it back, and we're going to use it on you. Which they did. So I wrote that scene, and then I phoned my sister, and I said, who the feck whips a dog? And she said, do you see, our thought process is so screwed up, you should have been asking, who whips a child? But that was our normal, and so that's been, it's been kind of weird reliving those scenes.
So it sounds like an incredible journey with huge ups and huge downs. Let's focus on a huge up. Rachel was awarded an OBE in February, so I think that requires a round of applause. Many congratulations for that. I believe you got it for a range of reasons other than just the business, but I also believe there was a bit of a story about you were waiting for that OBE for a while, weren't you?
Where did you hear that from?
Can't reveal my sources. We're in media, Rachel. But yeah.
Oh, my poor husband. He has a lot to cope with. So I've been doing I've been trying to do a lot of female championing, because if you look at the venture capital world, still in 2024, only 1.8 pence in every pound goes to female-led businesses. It's staggering. Now, we can't blame the venture capitalists for all of that. A lot of it is because women generally don't have the confidence to ask for it. So if we're not asking for it, we're not going to get given it. So I've been doing a lot of talks and trying to encourage women to be bolder. Anyway, we went and saw Tim Henman, at an event, and he had an OBE. So I said to my husband, I wonder if I got an OBE, whether that would really help give me credibility and help me be able to champion women. And Steve's like, husband's like, you can't just decide you want an OBE. You know, it doesn't work like that, Rach. I said, well, I'm going to try. So I stuck it on my vision board, on my manifestation board at home. And for any of you that know, you cannot ask for an OBE. Somebody has to nominate you. It then goes, and they can only nominate you for any award. It goes to the Cabinet Office, and then the Cabinet Office themselves decide at what level you should get. But to wind my husband up, every night we'd get home from work, and I'd run to the post box or the letter box. I'm like, well, where is it? So when it did actually arrive, I went running back. I was like, it's here. He was like, for fuck's sake.
I love the fact you put that on your vision board. That's just fantastic. So you mentioned there, and part of getting the OBE was your passion for supporting other female entrepreneurs and business people. And we've seen some fantastic female entrepreneurs up on stage today, and Dame Diane and yourself. If there's a young female sitting in the room today, there probably is, that's just starting out on the journey, what's the advice that you would give someone?
So we were actually talking about this over lunch. I was reading about Tesla man. What's Tesla man? Musk. Elon Musk. Yeah, him. That small entrepreneur. And he's of the belief that we are all just in a video game, or the equivalent, and we're just in a virtual world. So if that's the case, then why do we let fear stop us? So I think I would tell my younger self, just think that you are playing in a video game, and as long as you don't hurt other people, just go for it. Because most of our fears are completely unfounded and unrealistic.
Good advice, good advice. Now, you mentioned Steve, who's with you here, and you both work in the business together. I once worked with my wife for a while. And I've been in therapy ever since. How does it work for you guys?
I think that Steve would have a similar response.
Okay, well, you've been doing it for a few years, so obviously you make it work.
Yeah, Steve came for a job interview, and that was, 11 years ago, and has been with me ever since, unexpectedly. But I would like to make a complaint.
Oh, okay.
I go for lunch. You give me a box which is not one of mine,
not recyclable.
And not recyclable. And if I was Duncan Bannatyne, I'd be saying, it's pathetic, it really is.
The edges don't match. Look at that ribbon. Fair cop. I apologise. So that's put me in my place. I knew she was going to be feisty. So you seem full of energy. You seem full of drive. You're not like that all the time, are you? I mean, what do you do to relax? What do you do to level?
I'm like this all the time, aren't I, husband? Yeah. I do meditate most nights. I do strength training. I take myself, I'd like to say running, but it's more of a shuffle. I can't, the only time I'll sit still is if I'm ill.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And we've talked a little bit about the various projects you've mentioned, because it's not just the Tiny Box Company, but taking what I guess is your biggest project still, business, the Tiny Box. What does the future hold? How do you keep that business going forward?
I think as long as we keep listening to our customers, we'll carry on growing. And my main aim is to try. Sorry, Steve, haven't had this discussion. To bring more and more manufacturing back to the UK. We've recently built a new printing area. So we had printing facilities, but we've literally just doubled the size because we don't do enough in the UK. We rely too much. So the idea of the new print room is to be able to do small runs of printed with fast turnarounds of carrier bags, ribbon, stickers. But I'm actually working on a new project, another business as well, which is much bigger, which is in the dating arena.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it took some explaining to my husband as to why I had Bumble and Tinder and everything else on my phone. It's all research.
So what stage is that at? And when can we, have we got a name? Are we allowed to know any more about that?
It's called Indiki, because it's all about indicating what you're after. And I would hope to launch in the next year. But it's been a year in the making.
And where's the inspiration? Because, I mean, it's quite varied, isn't it? From recyclable, beautiful, elegant little boxes to dating. What's the connection?
Can you not see the link?
No, I'm afraid I can't. No.
When I first got Tiny Box Company, I should have given it more thought, because I had a very angry customer call me one day and said, "I thought you sold boxes." I said, "Well, I do." And she said, "Well, I've just been onto tinybox.com, we're tinyboxcompany.com,
Right.
and it's a porn site." I said, "I can assure you we don't sell that type of box." No, I just saw the market niche. Simple as that. It's just seeing where there's a need and going with that need.
Great. And so we're running out of time very quickly, but I just wanted to. Your life is quite a story, and obviously we're going to be able to see that story in printed form and find out a lot more.
The release date is August next year.
August next year. Somewhere in August next year.
And it's called The Baroness, if anybody wants to read it.
But what would you? Have you had your life again? Would you do anything different?
Do you know what? I have been through some really rough patches. I've had cancer 3 times, double mastectomy, missing half a lung on one side. But it makes you who you are. So I'm not sure I would change anything, because whilst I've had some really bad lows, I've had some incredible highs, and I have a great family, I have great friends. I don't think I would change it, because I've experienced so much and I've been really blessed.
And that story is part of who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Rachel, it's been a fascinating story. I think we've all found out a lot about this remarkable lady, full of energy and full of resilience. It's been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you very much for giving us your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Rachel Watkyn, ladies.